Our idea that God is white is all about art. The only image that we see that God is white is in the church. Social media is designed to constantly render young people to be insecure about themselves. When I started painting, I normally don't do studies. I go straight to the canvas and I look for forms. I look for subjects. I look for ideas right on the canvas. So I build up on it as I work. I really like the way I do things because it surprises even myself. When I work, I don't have any preconceived ideas of what I'm going to do. So as I keep building up on it, as I keep adding up elements, as I become more conscious of, say, maybe perhaps I'd like to come up with something that is more narrative, something that has, metaphorical representations or things like that. It forces me to think of a range of possible images that I'm going to incorporate on the painting. It keeps the process unpredictable. And it's that unpredictability of it that actually sustains the fun. And I would always argue that the fun in the process is first and foremost. If you're not enjoying it, don't do it. Well, I don't really know when I can tell if a painting or if an artwork is finished. No? I don't know if I should quote Jackson Pollock, di ba? I think he said something like, when do you know when you're finished with sex? It more or less has that kind of feeling, when you think you are satisfied with the outcome already. I like El Greco, because he deviates from the conventional approach to image making of his time. He was just a few years beyond Renaissance. He was more in tune with the sensual qualities of lines and contrast in values and colors. So that's why he was not satisfied with the correct proportions. He had to elongate in order to make the image more evocative. And I find that very interesting because he was digging into the more intuitive aspect of the process. In contrast to the Renaissance artists, they were very, very deliberate. Very rational, very scientific. I particularly like the modern artists, mainly because the exercise of autonomy. It was at this point when artists no longer had the support of the traditional institutions. The church wasn't there anymore. The state wasn't there anymore. Occasionally, they would have support from rich patrons. No? But for most part, they were on their own. And this was a good time because then they could decide what art is. It was no longer coming from external sources that tell them what art is. So you have guys like Marcel Duchamp. When he came up with the urinal and calls it art. It was the highest point of self-awareness of being an artist. It's art because the artist says so, things like that. I gravitate towards that kind of mentality in the arts because it's an occasion where, as an individual, you are empowered to determine that what you create is you, and you don't have to seek outside validation to declare that what you created is art. The best part about living away from the city and not being an active player in the social media world sort of reduces the pressure that one has to be subjected to. In general, it's easier for me to acknowledge that my peers are better than me. So that way, I don't have to worry about comparisons. I have to get more accustomed to minimizing my ego as an artist because I have to place my ego in another place. Sometimes it even surprises me that my contemporary would praise my works, and that happens from time to time, and I'm happy about that. Realistically, I would not really put myself on their level. That way, it's always easier to take things, whatever position that you get ascribed to. And the best part about that is when someone puts you up there, you are genuinely surprised by it. When I look back now, I have to admit that I still am weighed by insecurities even up to now. And then when I look back and see my old works and say, oh, that looks so bad, nakakahiya, no? Especially if they somehow end up in the auctions, like, ba't nila sinama yun doon, no? Mga ganon. But at the same time, you cannot change the past, so you just have to accept that somewhere along the way, that was just how you were. I think the best part about it is it reminds you that you are not as perfect as you think you are. So it's a constant reminder of your humanity, and in the end, you end up appreciating the whole thing, actually. Yes, I would say I have evolved in many ways. I have a much different worldview now when I was younger. I tend to be more kind of open-minded about the things I used to be dogmatic about. I'm looking at certain traditions mainly as encumbrances, getting to one's higher enlightenment. It's not so bad when you realize life really has no point, really has no meaning and no purpose. Because the best part about it is you can actually create one for yourself. And that is actually the realization of what creativity means for me. Being in such a situation enables me to do a lot of reflection, gives me a lot of time to think, analyze about a lot of things, I have always been interested in the dynamics of society, the social order, relationships of power, and how power is either created, challenged, and replaced by another power, and how ultimately art is in part of that. Our idea that God is white is all about art. The only image that we see that God is white is in the church. Then you begin to realize how effective art is and creating ideas and making that idea root down into our consciousness that it becomes so embedded in our worldview that we cannot think of the world outside of that which has been infused in our consciousness. No? It's very interesting how you are able to make that analysis that art is actually the main vehicle of ideas or ideologies that actually support social orders. The starting point by which the sacred is translated into the form that can be experienced, that can be seen, that can be touched. The concrete representation of the sacred is always the arts. And the sacred transitions from ecclesial to the secular. And you'd be surprised that our current iconography are actually human beings like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, yung mga ganon. In the past, you didn't know who the CEOs were. Now you have all these guys, being projected as common, ordinary people wearing sweaters, t-shirts, just like any one of us, in order to sustain the myth that you can be a self-made billionaire yourself. So that's the new religion. No? So when you start making this analysis, oo nga pala, no? And this is all related to the arts, how well curated these images are. I have very limited range of creativity as an artist. It's only now that I'm beginning to explore new materials, new forms. But I think there are more possibilities in another passion that I have committed myself to. And this is like taking art education to, especially to the regions, taking it to where the people are. Because another root cause of the situation that's besetting our country is miseducation. And when you realize that much of the educational process has to do with what people see, then you begin to realize the potential in art education and how art can also be a vehicle for education. So it's art education and education through the arts, especially in an era where AI or artificial intelligence is about to take over the rest of humanity. The only authentic assertion of our humanity is our creativity. And that's actually where I feel most drawn to. And that's actually where I feel there are a lot of unexplored possibilities. My advice would be for young people to strive hard to overcome the manipulative effect of social media. Social media is designed to constantly render young people to be insecure about themselves. They always have to seek validation from outside in order to feel that they are, full human beings. It's always easier said than done because everyone has their gadget beside them and everyone's looking at their gadgets all the time. What the digital age has actually created is that it has replaced truth from what is experienced to what is fed digitally on our minds, and that's very scary. If ever there's a memory I want to kind of leave, it would be to my kids, to my children. And I hope they're able to continue what I started with them, and they can make it bigger, they can make it grow. And I don't want to think in terms of like legacy. It's like as much as possible, I just like it to be as organic as possible. So like, I want to think about my children, I want to think about the people I work with, as I want them to be like the extension of my family, those who I feel share the vision. So that's part of what I want to see in the future.